Alright, so after seeing that bow shot, you're probably wondering how I did it, or how I mounted the camera. Basically, I took this strap here and this quick release mount, and I fashioned a mount using some aluminum bar stock with angle iron basically, and I got about a 3-foot section here. I cut off about 1 inch worth using a hacksaw, and it was pretty painful. And then I took a 3-inch bolt with a proper thread pattern for where you mount your stabilizer, and then I needed a regular lock washer, a nut, and a wing nut. And that's all the parts I needed. Of course, it was a little hard tracking down a bolt that was 3 inches long that had threads that went all the way down. Everything seemed to have threads right about in here, and then the rest of it was smooth. And I'll show that why I needed that here in a moment. But if you take this mount right here with the quick release and you use a Phillips head screwdriver on the back side here, you can take this out. That screw comes right out, and then you can remove that, and then you get the little quick release with the spring in the inside. So this is the only part I really need off of that mount in order to do this. Okay, so before I cut the angle iron out of the vise here, I went ahead and drilled my 5/16 hole. This is where the stabilizer, this is the hole where the screw for the stabilizer is going to mount. And then on the top here I have the tiny little hole. Not sure what size it is, I'm just kind of going eyeballs here. And then, but this is for the mount. The mount's going to sit right up there, so I offset that a little bit, so you need to account for that. So once I get it screwed on there, it'll be almost flush with the front. See if I can, yeah. So it'll sit on there pretty nice. So keep in mind that when you drill that hole right there, that you want to offset that just a little bit. So I'm going to painfully get to cutting here, and hopefully another 10 or 15 minutes I'll have this off. Got it. I need a beer now. Edges are a little rough, so I'm going to touch it up on the sander, and then we'll be okay. So I cut it with a hacksaw, took forever, and kind of cleaned up the sides a little bit with a sander, and now we're ready to put our mount on. If you notice here, that little spring-loaded clip, we want to make sure that makes contact with the metal. So I am going to put that on top, like so. Try to get that to make sure that spring gets some tension on it. There we go. And then we'll take our screw, slip it in the bottom, it's our screwdriver, and tighten this up. Now, you know, this is just a real coarse screw, and it's screwing into plastic, so this is not really going to hold that well. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of JB Weld. Let me get that focused. There we go. Okay. So I just kind of finger tightened that. It's not very tight, you know, otherwise I'm just going to strip out the plastic. But yeah, this thing's going to be able to wobble left and right. I mean, I can move it right now, as you see. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little JB Weld and run it around the sides, and maybe even put it in here a little bit. And notice that little spring right there, that little metal, I will make sure I get a little bit on top of that to keep that spring from moving out of joint. And so that'll be next after this, but let's take our bolt and we'll slip it in like so. Then I'll take a lock washer and we'll put this nut on top. And this is why I said it was hard for me to find this bolt, because of the threads needed to go all the way down. Most of the big box stores had bolts this long in the correct thread pattern, but the shank was not all the way down. So I'll tighten that up here in a moment with a real wrench or anything. But so eventually this will be screwed into the stabilizer of your bow. You'll get it nice and level to your bow, and then this will be on there as well, a little wing nut. I was lucky enough to find a wing nut too with the right pitch. I had to go to a specialty bolt shop around town to get this. But so anyways, you screw this into your bow, get it nice and level so that your camera is level with your bow, and then use this to torque it down and pull it up nice and tight. So now this takes the place of your stabilizer, and then you can mount your camera on it. And you know, if you don't have this particular camera that I'm talking about here, there's some of the flip cameras that I see. They look like a pocket camera basically, and if they have a tripod mount on the bottom, you can most likely drill a bigger hole here, do the same method I've used, drill a hole out larger here, and put the proper screw in for that tripod mount. And I bet you could mount your little flip camera right there and get some footage. The zoom makes, you know, it might be too wide, so a wide angle of field, but make sure you got enough zoom for it. But this is the bow mount so far. So I'm going to put some JB Weld on it and we'll see what happens next. Okay, so it's been dried overnight. I've got JB Weld all the way around the seams, and inside right there you can kind of see the spring that actuates this lever, and it's buried inside the JB Weld, so hopefully that won't move and pop out of place. But it looks pretty good, it's nice and stable. So now we're going to paint it with some camo, because camo is cool. Okay, so I got our mount all nice and painted, nice little camouflage color. I even painted the threads here, which is probably going to make it a little difficult to screw into the bow and to move this this wing nut. But I think more importantly, it was more important to take off that shine from that metal. You know, everything was all nice and silver, and that glare might give myself away to an animal or something. But now our camera's just going to snap right in there like so. The paint added a little bit of thickness there, so now there's a little less wobble like there was before, so I may not have to do anything. I was thinking about shimming it up with a piece of Kapton tape right in there, make it glide in there pretty easily without the tape getting munged up, but I don't think I'm going to need that now. It seems to be fairly tight. So we'll release it, pull it off. So now we're ready to mount it on the bow and see how it goes. Let's check it out. Alright, so as mentioned, like I said, you screw this in and then tighten down your wing nut, make sure it's nice and level, and then your camera will just snap right in. And it seems to be it's got a little bit of wiggle there, and I may end up shimming that up eventually just to see if it makes any difference when I shoot it. But you want to make sure this bolt here is long enough, but not too long, because the longer it's going to be, the more wiggle it's going to have when you release your bow. Mine here, it's fairly close to my knuckles when I shoot. This is a youth bow, it's pretty small, but sometimes it bangs into my knuckle if I screw this in a little too far. So I've got it fairly mounted out and then tightened down with the wing nut here. And you know, maybe I have like a 1/4 inch of worth of this inside the bow. But it doesn't look that bad, it doesn't really add any extra weight to it. Like I said, instead of something like this, if you don't want to go through the trouble of what I did to fashion all this, to modify these mounts that came with it, like I said, you can probably drill a bigger hole in the bottom here and mount something else like a little flip phone or something, or a flip camera. But this one, like I said, attracted me in the beginning because of the night vision. I thought that was fairly cool. Night vision cameras, I just don't see them that much anymore, at least on the low end. So I thought this was kind of neat in this case. But now let's take a look at some shots.